Redevelopment Agency regular meeting of December 13th. The order, please stand for the pledge. Ready to begin? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Lord, please give us the wisdom and guidance to make correct decisions for the city of Newman and all of its residents. And I ask a special touch of your hand on the Beatty family, Chuck and Cheryl, for the loss of their son Caleb yesterday. We just ask that you help comfort them through this difficult time. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Hutchins.
Present.
Candia.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Mayor King.
Present. Item 5, declaration of conflicts of interest. Seeing none, go to item 6, ceremonial matters. Presentation by Stanislaus Council of Governments, other known as STANCOG, regarding sustainable communities strategy. Vince Harris, welcome.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm Vince Harris, Executive Director for the Stanislaus Council of Governments. I'm also joined this evening by our Senior Planner, Carlos Yamzan, and also our Associate Planner and Project Manager for this effort, Jalen French. He's actually going to be doing the presentation. I'm just up here to kind of give him a lead in. The intent this evening is for us to provide a presentation to you regarding our sustainable community strategy. It's a requirement of the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the region, which is STANCOG, under the provisions of the laws passed in the state of California, AB 32 and SB 375. Our intent this evening will be give you a little background on those laws, what they really mean, give you an understanding of what the process will be going through to complete the sustainable community strategy, and of course, take any questions that the council might have. So I'd like Jalen to come forward and give the presentation. We really won't be very long. Jalen.
Mayor, members of the council, as Vince mentioned, we're here today to give a presentation on the Sustainable Community Strategy, which is brand new legislation. I will try to keep this brief, but there's a lot of information to cover, so I want to give it its due share here. But as I mentioned, brand new legislation, so we're here and we're going to be in front of each council and the Board of Supervisors to give this presentation early in the process. So the presentation is broken out into two stages. First, we'll give a little background on the legislation, how this effort came about, and then a little bit on the intent and the targets. The second part of the presentation will be getting into the details of the actual document, which is the SPS, or the Sustainable Community Strategy, and a little bit on the schedule. So again, here's the first part of the presentation. In 2006, the state legislature passed Assembly Bill 32, and the intent of that legislation was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by the year 2020. And as you can see on the chart on the right, there's many sectors that create emissions in the state, but the transportation sector at nearly 40% is the single largest contributor. So in the year 2008, the state legislature passed what I call an implementation bill to AB 32 called SB 375. And that's to specifically target emissions created by the transportation sector. So again, the intent of AB 32 is to reduce emissions. SB 375 is one way to do that, focusing on the transportation sector. So the legislation seeks to capitalize on the planning process already underway in the Metropolitan Planning Organization, of which STANCOG is one of 18 in the state. Primarily, we are responsible, in terms of this, we're responsible for two key documents. The Regional Transportation Plan, which is a long-range vision of the transportation system in the region, and the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is a distribution of the allocation of housing needs brought down to us by the state, by HCD. So historically, these two documents have had conflicting deadlines. You would adopt one and then subsequently adopt another. This legislation deletes or eliminates that conflict, and so now you're considering housing while you're planning for transportation and vice versa. You're no longer planning for either one of them in a vacuum. So the intent of the SCS is to set forth a vision of growth to taking into account transportation and land use housing, as land use planning, as I've mentioned. The SCS document will be part of the regional transportation plan, which we are required to adopt every 4 years. And the SCS will be a blueprint by which you meet the region's targets, and we'll talk a little bit about the targets in the next slide. So as I mentioned, we'll talk about the targets. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, sets targets every 4 years for each MPO in the state. StanCog currently has a placeholder target, and with the other 7 MPOs in the valley, from San Joaquin to the north to Kern in the south, a placeholder target of 5% in 2020 and 10% in 2035. So what that means is, under a business as usual scenario, if you project emissions out to 2035, what would that trajectory look like? Now, if we apply land use and transportation policies in the SCS, how could we lower or reduce that trajectory in the year 2020 and 2035, the 5 and 10%? So maybe I'll take a break here, see if there's any questions on sort of the background, the legislation. Any questions before we move forward into the actual document?
Any questions, Jalen?
I'll keep moving.
Continue on.
Keep moving. Okay, so even though we are linking land use and transportation planning in this document, the MPO does not maintain any land use authority. That authority stays with the local agencies, of which Newman is obviously one. So our first idea, our first undertaking was to create a steering committee composed of the 10 local agencies, LAFCO, and other members from our standing committees, who had interest outside of just streets and roads, transit, a citizen advisory member, and someone from the policy board. So the intent of this was to create broad representation of interest in creating this document. So we are scheduled to adopt RTPs every 4 years. We will next adopt an RTP in late 2013, and we will need to prepare an SCS as part of that effort. So that's approximately 2 years away. We will be working constantly, consistently until that date. And we've kicked off the process of informing the public and elected officials through these meetings, and we're going to hold others over the course of the next month. But we will, throughout the process, hold public workshops to gather input from the public and from elected officials. This is an informational meeting. Other workshops will be to actually gather and work with people on some of the details of the plan. So, mentioned a couple times, the SCS will be a part of or a chapter of all future regional transportation plans. And what our vision is at this point is we have a regional expressway study, which is a comprehensive look at all the major roadways in the region. We'll overlay that with all the local agencies' land uses and try to determine through a comprehensive look of if there's any opportunities or capacity to grow smarter, to improve our communities, to reduce VMT, vehicle miles traveled, and thus GHG emissions. And so that's the concept, and that concludes the presentation. We are definitely here to answer any questions you may have. It was pretty quick, but...
A lot of information. Any questions of Jalen? Okay. Thank you, Jalen. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Vince, Carlos, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll see you tomorrow, right? Okay. We'll move to item 7, items from the public, non-agenda items. Any member of the public wish to address the council? Now is the time to do it. Step to the podium, please. Wayne, good to see you.
Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Wayne Philbrook. I am the branch manager for your Newman Public Library, and I wanted to take a moment to let you know about some of the programs that are available at the library in the coming month. First off, we will not be having story time during the last 2 weeks of December. We'll have story time tomorrow morning as usual, and then we'll resume our regular weekly story time on January the 4th at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning. The Newman Public Library will have its regular hours throughout the holidays. None of the planned closures affect the Newman Public Library, so we dodged the bullet there. Our monthly family game night is coming up on Tuesday, December 20th. That's a week from tonight. From 4:30 to 6 o'clock in the library community room, we'll have Nintendo Wii, board games, card games, and lots of fun to be had. All ages are welcome to attend. Our next Children's Craft Day will be on Tuesday, January the 3rd. We'll be making dogs and cats out of yarn. And I would like to thank the Friends of the Newman Library for their support in providing the time and materials for that program. And every second, fourth, and fifth Tuesdays, coincidentally just at the same time as the city council meeting is going on, Tom Duarte comes down to the library and discusses the night sky in the library community room, has a little astronomy class, and then takes anybody that attends out into the parking lot and looks at the stars and the planets through his telescope. It's a wonderful opportunity for some learning. This program is open to all ages, and all of these free programs are brought to you through the 1/8 cents dedicated sales tax that supports the library. Please stop in and visit anytime, and thank you very much.
Any questions of Wayne? No. Thank you so much, Wayne. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Move on to item 8, consent calendar. A is waive all readings of ordinances and resolutions except by title. B is approval of the warrants. C is approval of the minutes of November 8th, 2011 regular meeting. D is adopt resolution number 2011 next to number resolution rejecting the claim of Katrina Delgado. E is adopt resolution number 2011 next to number a resolution rejecting the claim of Monica Hernandez. And F is authorize city manager to file a claim against Stanislaus County on the city's behalf.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull items D and E for separate consideration.
Okay. Items D and E will be pulled for separate consideration. Action on items A, B, C, and F.
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
A motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Acting on items D and E.
Mr. Mayor, yes, on the rejecting of the claims, I understand the RMA's position on this. However, I don't personally like to summarily accept or reject anything without having a little more information, and I would like these pulled so that they could be possible pending litigation and have them discussed in closed session.
Why couldn't we put those on the next agenda for a closed session for discussion?
We can, yes. I would, part of what's going on is, we have claims against the city. We have a third-party administrator, Ames, who looks at the claims and then gives recommendations to us. At this point, they've recommended that we reject those. That does not necessarily end the process, as then the claimant still has 6 months to file a lawsuit on that claim against us. So, when I got my counsel packet and I looked at that, and it raised some questions for me. But I think if for no other reason, it'd probably be a good opportunity for you and our attorney to maybe explain the whole process to us as a council, so we better understand it. A lot of times we summarily go through and we accept the recommendation, but and I understand a little bit how it works. No attorney don't claim to be one, don't want to claim to be one. Sorry, Tom.
I'm used to it.
However, I think it would probably be also a good educational opportunity for all of us to have a better understanding. And in the meantime, the both of you can kind of.
So at the direction of the council, there's 2 ways we can go tonight. We can take these 2 claims off and forward them to January for an action at that point in time.
There's one little wrinkle in that, and that is they'll be deemed rejected in 45 days if we don't act on them.
Yeah, they're going to be deemed rejected. These were submitted in early
November
to mid-November.
October, November.
Yeah, so they're going to be summarily rejected at the end of January.
45 days.
End of this
So
month,
the end
anyways.
of the basically at the end of the year.
Before we can have
I
another
understand
meeting.
your points well taken, and I know we talked about. I think you brought it up before that we would talk about those in closed session, and
All right.
I think at this point, we do that with the future ones. These, unless you have a special meeting, I think would be deemed rejected by operation of law.
Well, even if we reject it, we could still discuss it in closed session, though, correct?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think my options I was presenting, we could potentially either carry them over to January, but they're going to be rejected by the 45-day statute. We could reject them today. Either case, we can put those on potential litigation to discuss, as Don asked, at our next meeting, which is in January, because we don't have a second meeting in December. At which time, we could also talk about and do a presentation on claims and the procedures of claims, at which case we would do that in open session, because we wouldn't be talking specifics about it.
Right.
So closed session could be on these particular items as Councilmember Hutchins would like, as maybe the council concurs, talk about those in closed session, and then in open session, we'll do the full presentation about the claims. That way maybe the public becomes informed on the process as well. And that won't be talking necessarily anything about any particular case. We'll talk more in general terms at that time.
Yeah, because I would like to know, how, even though the RMA, aims, routinely says, reject the claim, I'd like, to discuss, what latitude and what movement we as a council can give our city manager to look at these and say, okay, is this worth, fighting for, if the amount is not very much, and it's something that we can easily prove or disprove, or, because I look at, the fact of going to litigation, bottom line, I know they're going to end up settling it anyway.
Right.
And I know we're part of this group, and, they look at it and they discuss it, and ultimately they're going to pay it out.
I think, Mayor, I think Councilman Hutchins, I think you're correct. I think maybe it is time just for a full refresher course on how the procedure and the process works, what our role is as staff and as a city, and what the role of Bickmore and Ames is as our risk management authority, and how those two work together.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I guess my question would be, based on the, the 45-day rule, and is if it's summarily rejected anyway, in 45 days, why do we have to take action on it anyway?
That's true. You don't, and even if you rejected it, you could also settle it later.
I mean,
So your options, I think your point's well taken, your options are still open either way.
One potential answer to your question, council member, is at the time the city rejects a claim, it starts a statute of limitations on a case being filed against the city in terms of a lawsuit. So if you do it early enough, you potentially cut down the amount of time that's out there for claimants to file lawsuits against you.
understood, but it's a 6-month statute of limitations after it's rejected. We're already at the end of that period anyway, according to, or will be when?
Yeah.
December 31st?
The end of the month, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
for the end of the month.
so if we do it now, then we're starting the
Starting
calendar, the clock right now, rather than December 31st.
Right.
Okay, so with that, do you want to, we'll go ahead and take action on D and E then tonight?
I'd like to, I'd say we go ahead and take action on D and E, but mark what our first meeting in January for consideration, or at least where we can discuss this possible.
Put that in the form of a motion?
Yes. I guess it would be, yes.
Is there
If that made any sense.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
That we will, we'll go ahead and reject this claim on item D and E, and then we'll have a informational closed session.
We'll have a closed session and an open session discussion regarding the procedures
Okay,
of claims by Ames.
okay. There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item F, authorize, we already did that, sorry. Item 9, public hearings. A is adopt resolution number 2011, next to number resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4. Chief.
Evening, Mayor, council members. Before you tonight is another report on a nuisance abatement. Abatement notices were sent out to property owners on maintenance of their properties in accordance with ordinance number 95-4, Chapter 2,
Title 8-2-3. This notice informs property owners of their rights to be heard at a public hearing, the procedures and their options. A list of properties are before you tonight. We have one that did not meet the final deadline of Monday, December 12th. That address is 1214 Duckpine Circle. We have 2 pictures for you tonight. And in conclusion, I will bring it back to City Council for possible consideration and further action.
Any questions of Chief before we go to public hearing? Public hearing is now open. Anybody wish to address the council regarding this issue? Seeing none, close the public hearing, bring it back to council for direction.
I'd make a motion we adopt resolution number 2011, next in number, a resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4.
Second the motion.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Item 10, regular business. Adopt resolution number 2011, next in number, resolution receiving and accepting the general purpose financial statements and the Newman Redevelopment Agency audit for fiscal year ending June 30, 2011. Luke.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I try and make my resolution titles as long as possible. Before you tonight is a resolution to accept and receive our audited financials for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2011. With us this evening is Bob Keel from Clendon & Bird and Company, the audit firm that conducted the audit, and he'll be doing a presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Robert Kale, and I work at Clendon & Bird. I was the lead auditor on your audit this year. We'll start off with the City of Newman Redevelopment Agency, which is a component unit of your citywide financials. Have you had a chance to look over any of these?
I have.
It was an unqualified audit, which means it's good. The best you can get is an unqualified with no exceptions and no knocks against it. On page 8 is your assets. There wasn't a lot of action this year in the redevelopment this year. As you can see, your assets are up a little bit over last year. You got 3.2 million compared to 2.9 million last year. Your liabilities are up primarily because of the CRAF transfers and stuff. And it breaks down. Page 9 and 10 is GASB 34 requirement, which shows you the statement of activities, your expenses, and what kind of fees are charged. RDA is primarily tax, portion of your property tax, that you can see on page 10, and investment earnings, and whatever miscellaneous money comes into it. You still had an increase in net assets of $101,000 this year. Page 11, you see the breakdown between the general and the housing. These are their assets. Cash balance in the general fund, as you see, is a negative balance. Primarily, it's what's happening is the state taking money from you guys. And they're taking money from about every RDA around. The revenues on page 13, you can see your taxes actually about almost $100,000 less this year, property taxes. Your expenses are down. You had no capital outlay this year, so no work really done. You did do a couple loans that you put out this year, like about $35,000, which is back in the notes. One thing on the, if you go to page 11, And at the bottom there, you have your fund balances. What this is GASB 54, which is a new requirement on city financials. And basically it breaks it down into unspendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Unassigned, if there's any negative balance in your fund balance, that's where it has to go. Unspendable is prepaids and certain loans, certain receivables. Restricted for. Restricted is an outside requirement. State requires that that money be used for housing, right? It's restricted for that. If you had a grant, you'll see it in the citywide, if you had a grant that came in for construction from the federal government or the state government, something like that is restricted from outside. It will be restricted. Committed is this council voted on. You guys voted on impact fees, development fees, developer fees. Those are committed for parks. Those are committed for police. Those are committed for this. You passed the sales tax, added a half a cent that went to police, that would be in committed. Assigned, if you assign something, could be the finance director, city manager, even the board says, well, we want to assign $50,000 to some kind of project or whatever. That's kind of a sign. It's not really voted on by the committee, by the city council, but it's been assigned. Unassigned, like I said, negative balances, or you haven't assigned it to anything. There's a breakdown on page 31 in the notes, which shows what it would be last year and what it would be, how the difference are, what they were this year. Last year they were unreserved. This year one is restricted, one is unassigned. So that's the difference. And there is a bigger note that talks about GASB 54 presentations. The notes that you have outstanding are on page 28. You added two this year, one for $20,000, one for $15,000. And those are the requirements and everything else of the loans. Any questions on the RDA?
Any questions, Bob? Nope.
Now comes the big report. And they keep on getting bigger because the federal government keeps on requiring other pages. And then you have to keep on renumbering something. On page 1 is the independent auditor's report. You were a single audit this year because of all the federal funds that you did receive for your park out here, RRA funds. And so you have an unqualified report here, which is the highest, as I said earlier, and it expresses, talks about the A133 audits, single audit requirement, and there's extra wording in there, which is now a new requirement. Pages 3 through 14 is the city's management discussion and analysis. This was Lou's work here. What we do is we do not audit this, but we do go through and check the numbers to make sure they tie to what the financials are. We'll discuss it with Lou if there's some questions about it, and change it or not change it. Depends upon what our decision is. Page 15 is the overall look at your balance sheet. Statement of net assets. You're welcome. Oh, no problem. Government activities, you see, this is your general fund and all your non-governmental funds, your special revenue funds, construction funds. You have $30,662,000 in that. You have accounts payable and liabilities of $4,700,000. That includes the big loans and compensated absences. Proprietary funds, this is your water and sewer, and your $13,600,000. That's about $4 million more than last year. And a lot of that is just your fixed assets because of the park here. The downtown plaza came into being, and all those assets were in WIP, and now they're actually assets. Also, you had assets that you paid for this year with the federal grants, over $2 million in federal grants that went to the plaza. As you can see, the net assets, you have over $11 million in capital assets, related capital assets. Basically, that's your assets versus your long-term debt. You got capital projects, restricted for capital projects, community debt services, and unrestricted. The next page, you have the statement of activities, which is the same as we talked about earlier on RDA. Up front, you have your expenses. These are your governmental activities. Public safety, general government, public works, community development, culture, and then interest on the long-term debt. Below that, you have water and sewer. Then the next column, you have your fees and charges that you receive. Next two are operating grants and contributions. And the other one is capital grants and contributions. Your capital grants are your big grants that you receive. And they mostly went, as you can see, Public Works took a large chunk of them for the construction. Down below, you have your taxes. Sales tax, motor tax, other investments, and transfers, which you had none this year, between general fund and proprietary funds. Net changes of assets were $3,938,000. So quite a bit. And most of that, like I said, is construction. 1819 is just your basic assets without your fixed assets put in. This is how each fund was working. The other funds, combined other funds, is in the back in page around 61, 62, 3 back there. Those are all the other special revenue funds, all the way in back. Those get combined, split up to what they're basically, and they go there. 20 is just a reconciliation, and basically what we're doing is we're reconciling the balance sheets to the overall status of the city. The status of the city includes all these fixed assets and everything else, which aren't inside funds. They're in a different thing. They're long-term general fixed assets. And that's how we combine them back in, and we reconcile for the same number. Revenues on the next page, you see basically your major funds are required, and there's a worksheet that we go through. It has to be so much of the assets, so much of the revenues, liabilities, and then the other funds come on in. And there's your total. Then there is a reconciliation for your revenue statement. And some of this that gets pulled in is you did pay long-term debt. You did pay other things that have to go into that to reconcile between the two funds. As required by GASB 34, if it's a major fund, you have to have your balance, your budget, original budget, final budget against the actual amounts on all your major funds. On page 31, 32, we have the proprietary funds, which is your water, sewer, your assets, and your revenues. 33 and 34 is the cash flow. Cash flow is just straight cash. What cash went in, what cash came out. As you can see, there's no depreciation in there because depreciation is not cash. So it works on down. As you see on the sewer, you had a decrease of cash of $1,788,000. That was also your refinancing and the purchase of the property, the sewer. You have your notes starting on page 36, 35. Things you want to note is on page 43. 42 and 43 is your GASB 54, and this is a breakdown of all your fund balances. It would be almost kind of hard to put all this into the financials up front. So you have a note here, and it breaks it down specifically by the funds. Your major funds and then your other funds. As you can see, non-spendable, you have prepaids up there. We talked about general fund. Right now, there is nothing really assigned or committed specifically or restricted. Community development, it's restricted. The problem with grants for housing and stuff, a lot of them have to be used for the same purpose. If you have a house that gets sold and they turn back in, they pay off the note. If it was a redevelopment or if it was a first-time home buyer, it has to be a first-time home buyer. Go back into, so you're kind of restricted by an outside source, federal government. Redevelopment, federal grants, it's restricted. Housing, certain housings are restricted. You still have a deficit balance in the storm drain fund. You probably have that for a while. And it's been, I don't know how many years now. Yeah, it's been a while. But it's over the project out there. You have your receivables, investments, accounts, your loans receivable. Your loans receivable are basically the ones that are in the redevelopment. Subsequent events. We put the redevelopment, California Redevelopment Association is still suing the government, and the lawsuit's in there. Until it gets satisfied, we need to leave that note in there. Because it could affect a lot of things, so it's still outstanding. You have your breakdown of additions for capital assets for general fund and the proprietary fund. Your transfers that you did this year between funds, and then all your long-term debt, and it breaks down by year the total amount for each loan you have. So you still have your fire truck loan out 2 more years, what the payments are going to be, what the interest is, and housing bonds. You have Springbook Accounting, the big accounting software you guys purchased this year. You have water revenue bonds, and each one is there. Then on page 54 and 56, it breaks it down for the long term for your general activities, what you, beginning balance, how much you paid, and what the outstanding balance is, and what is due in 1 year on the principal. Same thing with the business. Then you have your payables, your SURAF note, and then you have your risk management data, commitments, retirement system, And new accounting procedures, it's another note, and it's on 54, and it shows what they were for prior year, if we had done it for prior year. Okay? You have 2 letters in back that we did not find anything wrong. On page 68, you have all your federal grants that are required for the single audit. You have the schedule of finding and questionable costs for your single audit. We did not find anything. It was qualified. This report is being submitted tomorrow, actually, to the federal government through online procedures. They're basically in there right now. All we have to do is get the confirmation that you guys accept this, and then me and Lou will certify the submission. It'll be done. The report on internal controls and financing and compliance. And then we have the independent report, audit report on circular A-133, which is a special single audit one. And then your California Transportation Act report. Possibly there's going to be more single audit stuff coming out in the future. If you have $500,000 or more in federal grants total, they're talking about more requirements on this. They might be dropping if the smaller amounts, I'm saying $1 million or $2 million and below, they might drop it, or they might restrict it more. Because most of the grants for single audit are $10 million and above, or $5 million and above. And that's where like 97%, 98% of all money the federal gives out is in those larger amounts. Okay? Any questions on the audits?
Any questions of Robert? Comments?
Yeah, is there any way we can keep this from the federal government knowing we have any money? They're liable to come.
It seems like everybody is requiring now online input. Federal taxes, your IRS. We're required, if we do so many taxes, that they have to be filed online. That's so they don't have to, because they get all the data, they don't have to enter anything. And they're a lot more easier for them to do research on it and everything else. It's the same thing. We used to mail these in to the clearinghouse. Now it has to be online.
Well, as usual, Robert, it's a very thorough report, and although it's a lot of information, a lot of numbers, I don't want to say it's an easy read, but it's pretty, as they say, black and white, and so very thorough. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we try to, some of the audits I've seen gets a lot more in depth and too much in depth, and it's like, do you really need to know the nuts and bolts of something minor? And they really go on to it. You guys are looking good. I know everybody's hurting a bit, but you know, overall from other cities and other districts and everything else that we've seen, there's people in a lot worse shape.
There's always a bright side to things in there.
A brighter side.
Well, and I think, obviously, we can commend our staff for doing a good job and watching the dollars. So
I'd like to thank Lou and Mike for the work and their team. They really did good. Lou for a new guy.
All right. If there's no question or comments, thank you, Robert. Council action.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution 2011, next number, a resolution receiving and accepting the general purpose financial statements and the Newman Redevelopment Agency Audit Fund, Agency Audit, for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2011.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, authorize city manager to execute a contract with the Planning Center / DCNE for planning services. Stephanie.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you is a proposed consultant agreement with the Planning Center DCNE for planning services in relation to the preparation of a non-motorized transportation plan. In 2010, the city, along with Stanislaus County, applied and received a Prop 84 grant under the Sustainable Communities Planning Grant and Incentives Program. Each city proposed to develop different plans and templates that would be used in a collaborative toolbox that all the cities can utilize. Newman's portion was a non-motorized transportation plan. Given that grant funds are now available for expenditure and our past experience with DC&E through our general plan process, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the city manager to enter an agreement with the Planning Center DC&E for the preparation of our non-motorized transportation plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments, Stephanie? Council direction?
Make a motion, we authorize city manager to execute a contract with the Planning Center, DC&E, for planning services.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Stephanie. Item C is report on appointments to the Youth Baseball Softball Board. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. Youth baseball is getting ready to, youth baseball, softball is getting ready to start up again, and we do. While it is a community-based program, we do have a vested interest in that program. One, that is a reflection on the city, whether people know it or not. They commonly refer to it as the City of Newman program. As council members, I'm sure you've heard comments from parents and coaches and players from both sides, those that like it and those that have issues with it. But again, we make a financial commitment every year. We put money into the fields for rehab. Our public works staff maintains the fields and mows them and does a lot of stuff. We don't drag them and chalk them, but we do put a financial contribution towards that. So I know it's kind of in the past it's kind of gone back and forth, and we're working on getting a good working relationship with them, and it's been hot and cold. Not necessarily cold, but maybe lukewarm. But I think there's better ways to communicate. And in the past, the council has appointed one of their rec commissioners to sit on that board. It was a non-voting position, though. Anyways, and then we've heard from a few people that maybe they were trying to get positions on the board and couldn't, and maybe it was closed. I just think, and as a recommendation, this is something that the staff has come up with, that maybe we use a little bit of our fields as a caveat here, and appoint a couple members to the board to sit on as city liaisons. They would be voting members. We could tie that to our annual agreement with them in the use of the fields. Then have those reps, or at least one of them, come back and report to us on a pretty regular basis about what's going on in the Little League. And we have probably, I can't remember the last time Little League or youth baseball's come up and done a report to the council about what's going on in the program. I know there's a couple of people, and these are all long-term residents, that have expressed a desire to be on the board. Those people are Derek Solano is one of them, Todd Rocha and Mr. Tony Lemus have all expressed an interest to be on the board and would be willing to serve as city liaison for maybe a trial period of 2 years to see how it goes. Maybe communication works a little bit better. The communication a lot of times has to work with when the league's starting up, so that we can make sure our public works people are getting in there in time. When's the work day? So that we can have the appropriate equipment there. What's the best place and needs of the league with respect to the field? Is it the backstop and a few other things? And we coordinated a lot of the effort with the placement and the installation of the new scoreboard. If you haven't been out there, there's a new scoreboard at Barrington. It's a nice donation by one of our local businesses out there. The city took an active role in that, as well as we paid to have the footings designed and engineered, and we worked on a lot of that. So anyways, I thought I would throw this out to the council and see what your feedback is. I have talked to the president of the youth baseball board. He was agreeable, and he didn't have any issues with the city appointing people to sit on that board, nor did he have any issues with the people that I discussed with him. So anyway, this is more of a discussion item, and with your agreement, we could get these 3 people on there, and then just kind of amend our annual agreements with them to reflect that.
Well, I think we all know it's been an ongoing problem. It's been more hot over there than cold, I think. A lot of issues going on with the inner board, and I agree. I think it's about time that the city take a little bit more active role.
And the mayor's got a little bit more historical perspective, but at one time it was a city-run ran program. And at another time, we took the application, but it was more community-based, and so it's kind of gone back and forth between who operates the technical part of it. So, if that's of interest to any of the members.
Michael, the city, are all the facilities ours?
Yes.
So basically, they
own the equipment,
but they operate under I would think, operating under the city's auspices since it's city facilities?
They use city facilities for practices and for games and for snack bar. They carry their own insurance. They're responsible for providing their own insurance and naming the city as an additional insured as required by.
So basically, we lease out the fields to them for whatever it is in an agreement, and then they've been running it as a de facto separate organization.
For the last couple of years, yes, that's correct. Maybe 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Well, I believe it. I've seen it in other cities too, that these boards seem to get very cloistered and certain people on them, and I think that this would be a good thing for us to have somebody that would represent the city's interest in this also. Not only the city's interest, but the kids' interest too.
Well, unfortunately, it's even though it's a program for kids. Anytime you get adults involved, it tends to go sideways. The kids could care less; they just want to play. But adults get involved, and it takes a whole different spin. So, I've had a lot of discussion with Michael over the past few years about it, and I've gone over and made some personal observations of what goes on, and it's sad, really, because the kids are the ones that suffer. So I think this is a good thing for us to.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's just the sport of baseball itself. It is America's pastime. Soccer doesn't tend to get as competitive, and there are times I think in basketball it does get competitive, but not as competitive as maybe this particular sport for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because a lot of people played it when they were kids, but baseball just tends to get the parents going. It just probably ought to just put all the parents in the outfield.
If
myself included,
if the parents weren't there and just let the kids play, we would not have any issues.
Yeah.
That's true.
I've seen both sides of it, so. So I for one agree with Michael's recommendation, and I would hope that the rest of the council would concur.
Maybe just get a motion and just a formal vote to appoint those.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Derek Solano, Todd Rocha, and Tony Lemus to serve on the Youth Baseball Softball Board for a period of 2 years.
Second the motion.
And what we'll do is we'll include that as part of our annual agreement with the baseball.
I was gonna ask if you do that, are you gonna need to make an appearance at one of their meetings to let them know?
I will. Yeah, like I said, I've been in communication with the board president. He knows this is occurring. He knows it's occurring tonight. I will follow up with another letter, and if they so desire and they want me to attend the meeting, I will.
Okay, great. Okay, there's been a motion and a second, I think. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, Michael, thank you. All right, we'll go to item 11, items from District 5, Stanislaus County Supervisor Jim D. Martini.
Good evening, Mayor Caton, council members. Tonight I've brought a box of the Task Force Healthy Choices calendar, which looks new. I know you probably can't see it too well from the other end, but this is like the one that you have hanging on your wall from 2011. This is the 2012 calendar. In it, there are drawings from elementary school students from Newman, Patterson, and Gustine. The awards were given out beginning on the 5th in Gustine, where there were 2 winners. On the 7th, I presented the awards in Patterson, where there were 6. And last night, I was at the Newman Crow's Landing School Board, where I presented 4 awards. Each winner got $50. And the grand prize, which was up on top, which I thought was very good, we gave $100 for that this year. Our theme this year was let's eat smart and play hard. It's in keeping with the task force exercise and diet choices. And in order to make these changes that we need to make, we need to get into the schools and promote a healthier lifestyle at a very young age. In fact, one of the winners last night was in kindergarten, and another one was in first grade. We had a category for that. I thought it went really well this year. This year's calendar is just slightly smaller than last year, but it's a lot heavier paper, and it's a lot more durable. So I have left a box for you. Perhaps the city could distribute those at the library and at City Hall. I think there's about 500 in that box. So this winds down the year. The Healthcare Task Force has done a variety of programs this year, exercise programs, health programs, calendar, Biggest Loser weight loss calendar. We've done the weight loss contest plus the calendar and the health summit that was right here in Newman. So as we look forward to this next year, we've now developed our letterhead, which was approved at the last meeting, and have a letter of introduction to grant organizations to ask for grants to do some of our programs. So anyway, that's what we're doing. I think we've concluded a good year. We're ready to start our 4th year. The next meeting will be in January 26th in Gustine. As far as the county issues, I really have nothing here tonight. I've heard nothing for a while on the flood control project, and there has been really nothing done on the air base at all. The developer has done some scoping meetings, but he's left out of his scoping meetings his finance plan, his traffic impacts, the water supply, and what he's going to do with the sewage. All critical projects that should have been in that, but they were not. The project is hard to say whether it's on track or not, but it's scheduled to come to the board with an environmental impact report completed by June. Whether that happens, we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, so I left the box there for you, and if you could distribute those, we'd all appreciate it.
Any questions, Jim? Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay, we've got item 12, items from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, and the council can't see him at this point, but when you come back around, you will. A local group called Soldiers Far From Home, what they do is they prepare care packages and they mail them off to our soldiers and armed services that are serving overseas. Had a little contest, an art contest, and the winners are actually displayed here tonight, and they're at the front of your dais. The first place winner was Laura Swally. She's a junior who at Orostimba High, and that's the one in the middle. It's a depiction of, there's 3 oil paintings here, and they're all have an individual on there with a flower, and it says, "Thank you so much for your service." Second place was a senior, again at Orostimba High School. He also lives in Newman, named Dalton Wilson, and he has a poster-sized one here on the side. And then lastly, to the right over there is the third place, which is honorable mention, was Denise Maldonado, again, Orostimba High School. So Orostimba High School did very well. They took first, second, and third, but I believe this was both Gustine and Orostimba residents that they took part in this art contest. So we offered to go ahead and display those for Soldiers Far From Home. I know in our budget presentation tonight, you heard about that deficit that occurs in the in the storm drainage account. And it's been there for a number of years, and the reason why that occurs is because we have an outstanding liability. Part of what has happened when Sherman Ranch was constructed along Sherman Parkway, there's a big channel, Hearthstone and Sherman, there's a big channel that goes there, and their credits for their lots, the amount of money that went into that facility out was greater than the amount of credits they could get on their lots for storm drainage. So I believe we had a 10-year, we had a 7-year, and then we extended it with our settlement agreement. So they have a 10-year, but that's probably going to expire in another 4 or 5 years. So then that liability gets wiped away, and in essence, the city gets probably $700,000 worth of improvements, and we're going to get them done. On the reimbursement form, we're probably going to need to reimburse by that time maybe $350,000 or $400,000. So in the end, when that reimbursement agreement expires, that liability then goes away, which then makes that fund positive. So just Bob didn't really go into it too much, but that's what occurs there. There's just an outstanding liability that has a limitation on when we have to pay that back, and it's not actually the city, it's when we collect fees from future development. In the development world right now, you're probably not seeing a lot of people pay that fee, so just wanted to update you on that. Also to update you on the Oddfellow buildings, things are going well. We've had some cabling people come through, and there's an opportunity for people to bid on a cabling project right now. There's some general construction with some walls and some texturing and a few other things that are going on right now. We're working with a casework company, they also known as Cabinetry. They do daises and counters. If you've ever been to Series Unify, they did their dais over there. They've done counterworks in lots of commercial banks and the rest, so we'll be working with them. They're out of Waterford. Final Cut Media is another one we're kind of working on right now with respect to all the audio video that goes into the council chambers. Again, a lot of our focus right now is on the office portion of it, and getting a lot of that established, because we want to be in there by the end of March is our goal at this point in time, and then right behind that, the dais and the council chamber will follow shortly thereafter. So we anticipate probably a 3-month lag between the offices being done, and then our goal right now is the end of June, beginning of July, to move all the operations in the council chambers to the new building over there. So we'll keep you informed as things keep moving along there. So just a few dates that are going on right now. The third Thursday of every month is the Planning Commission meeting. That would be December 15th this week, and due to a lack of items, the Planning Commission will be canceled. The next council meeting, which would have been the 27th, is going to be canceled. December 24th was actually a Saturday. Through June 2nd, all the city offices are closed for a city holiday. Everyone with furloughs and everything else that goes along with that, we just close the offices down between Christmas and New Year's. Everybody returns back to work on January 3rd, excuse me. And then just on behalf of myself and all the city staff, we want to thank the council for another great year. You guys, we really enjoy working with you, and we all want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And with that, Mayor, that's all that I have.
Any questions or comments, Michael? Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. And obviously the same feeling back towards our staff. You guys do a great job. We appreciate it. Comments? Garner?
Best looking one goes first. Anyway, I have a few items to update council with. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask me. Main Street intersections, to give council an update on that project. It appears as though they're done, but they're far from done. The colors need to be evened out and lightened up so the names are more legible, and we have been working cooperatively with George Reed on that. They have forwarded a proposal to us late this evening. We'll be reviewing that and getting back with them, and we're negotiating to come to terms on that. So as we go along, the names will, when we're done, we will be able to read them, just so everybody knows. We're starting a new project, M Street Sewer Line Project, which is actually, we call it the M Street Sewer Line, but it's between L and M Street from Merced to Kern. We're going to be replacing that sewer line in there. We've been having continual problems with that one. We're cleaning that on a weekly basis. So that project will be starting up this week and run for approximately 4 weeks. The water rate study. We're currently revising the CIPs based on input from the ad hoc committee and from staff. And we just got that spreadsheet in this week. So we hope to have our first, last, and only ad hoc meeting remaining in January. Let's see. Doug Mutoza, a longtime employee with the city of Newman, is retiring. The council's invited, if they so choose to, his retirement party, which will be at the Louis J. Memorial Building on December 22nd from 12 to 1. Shelley's catering that with Tri-Tip. We would like to get a head count on that by the end of this week if possible. We'll send an email out on that to the council. City manager also mentioned the furlough week for Christmas. Most of the public works staff will be off on furlough, but we'll have a skeleton crew a few hours a day coming in to check on different things in case there are some issues that we need to deal with. And the last thing I would like to do is to thank the chamber for their Christmas tree lighting ceremony. It went off without a hitch, and Public Works is very pleased that it was very well maintained and they did a good job. We had very minimal cleanup and very little staff involvement on the cleanup of that. So with that, I'd like to thank the chamber for doing a good production there. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for council.
Any questions or comments, Gardner?
12 to 1 on the 22nd.
Yes, sir. And it's $15 a person.
You're gonna pick that up, right?
I want to pick that up.
Does that mean no?
That means no.
He invites us, then he wants us
Yeah.
to pay?
He invites us, then he wants us to pay.
Does that mean that comment you made a while ago about staff, were we withdrawing that?
Yeah.
We'll talk afterwards.
I was just getting ready to throw out some props to you, too, but never mind. Never mind.
I'll see what I can do.
You can sit down now. Next. No. Thanks, Gardner. All right, Chief. You got better news?
I won't be asking you for any money.
That's off to a good start.
We wrapped up our Tickets for Tots campaign in December 1st, and I'd like to thank the community for their participation in it. We received several hundred toys, a couple bikes, and $500 in donations through that event. So it was a good month for the kids.
Excellent.
So, and we'll be delivering those for the Toys for Tots campaign tomorrow. Holiday seasons are upon us, so would request everybody celebrate, correctly and get a designated driver and be smart. Safety also when you're buying presents. Don't leave them in your cars. Don't leave them unlocked. Don't leave them visible. Things like that to prevent you becoming a victim. And the holidays are a great time to adopt a pet, and we do have some at the shelter. You can find them on Facebook and Pet Finder, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the chief? Are you paying?
Paying to go, yes.
Thanks, Chief.
Not for everybody.
Oh. Doggone it. Tough crowd. Lou, anything? Stephanie? Nothing? Okay. We'll go to council members. Councilmember Hutchins.
Just a couple of things. You should have in front of you tonight some things from the Alliance. The Alliance Business Attraction Strategy. As you know, we're members of the Alliance, and basically the job of the Alliance is to put businesses and cities and the county together to attract businesses into the area. Well, they recently came up with a brand new plan that they want to look at. It's a three-pronged plan. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the major part of that plan is the inland port opportunity, as it's called, also what we call West Park. And if you'll notice from the paperwork that I put in for over 3 years, that would be starting in 2012, the Alliance in these three strategies is putting a little over $500,000 into them, of which almost half of that is with West Park. We had a special meeting last month from all the board of directors, of which I'm a member, and one of the things that we talked about was the very things that Jim brought out earlier tonight, and in fact I brought it up at the meeting, and several others echoed my sentiments of we have no idea what kind of real plan he's going to come up with. And with $254,000 or so slated to be spent on this, the Alliance was directed that there's a trigger on this. Unless he comes up with a plan, unless it's approved by the Board of Supervisors, then no money is to go toward this plan. So, because they're wanting to make all these trips to the Pacific Rim, join all these trade organizations and everything else, and several members of the, especially this side of the community, said that spending money without even knowing what he's doing, and they admitted that his plan has been nebulous so far. So, but we're going to keep an eye on this just to make sure, because we don't put a whole lot of money into it. I think about a little over $3,000 or so, Michael, each year. But it definitely will impact us if this goes forth without a good plan. And so, I mean, I know Jim's feelings on the whole thing, but I can tell you this: the Alliance and its executive board is fully behind the West Park. They want to see it go. They want to see this inland port. I still have some reservations, not only because of the plan, but because of all of the, in the Port of Stockton, there are a lot of expansion going on right now in the Port of Stockton, less than 60 miles from us, so to speak, 50 miles up the road. And even though Stockton is not, quote unquote, an inland port, because it sits on the Delta, it's still inland as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know that we will be greatly enhanced by having something just up the road here. So I think as a city we really need to, and I know Ed's been keeping an eye on it, Michael's been keeping an eye on it, but we really definitely need to keep an eye on the planning that they're doing and going ahead. So that's one of the things. And I don't know if this got into you, but there was the Patterson Irrigator did a article on West Park. Some of the numbers in here wrong. They said 533,000. That's the total strategy for the Alliance. It's only about half of that for the for this park, but it does have some good information on it, especially because of the funding and sources and different things like that that are going to be involved. Other than that, just would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Don. Roberta?
I don't have anything.
Nick?
I just want to make a comment about the tree lighting. I thought it was a great success. Kudos to the chamber, and it was a great turnout. Best I've ever seen. So, and I think the businesses downtown prospered too, because after it was over, I walked down the street and about every restaurant was packed. So, great, super.
I would echo that sentiment, and it was, I think it was a good collaborative effort, you know, not only with our chamber members, but our city staff, you know, jumped in and helped out, and by far it was the best tree lighting ceremony, and it was fun. You could just feel the excitement in the air where everybody was there. The skating rink was a hit. You may have created a monster there, Vicky, but I think it was. And I said several times, you know, working you go for $5 and, you know, get a hot dog, get a drink, and skate and have a lot of fun. So it was truly a great night. Heard a lot of feedback, a lot of positive comments. Didn't hear any negatives at all, except one lady was complained that I guess kids weren't able to skate long enough, or some kids were skating too long. I don't know what it was, but if that's the only concern we had, it was flawless. So probably bigger and better next year, I guess, huh? Yeah. It was great.
Let's see, and I don't know if anybody else, I got a letter in the mail from the Knights of Columbus. They have their annual, it's a Greater Modesto community, the St. Joseph's Knights of Columbus. They honoring first responders of Stanislaus County, fire, police, emergency medical services, and military. They host a mass and a luncheon. That's Saturday, January 7 at 10 o'clock. And that's at the St. Joseph's Catholic Church on Oakdale Road in Modesto, if anybody's interested in going. I got the information. And let's see, and I'll be hosting the county mayors on December 20th, Tuesday the 20th here in Newman at the Westside Theater. And our downtown is such a beautiful sight, and thank staff for lighting trees up. It's beautiful, and so I get excited to be able to host the mayors for the last meeting of the year for our business meeting, and that'll be on the 20th, and Senator Cannell is our guest speaker. So we get to show off the plaza, the downtown, and the theaters all at the same time. And Ferris is going to be our hostess and taking care of us that night. So I'll have all the mayors here in town on the 20th to get to see our beautiful city. Again, on behalf of my family, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and see everybody in January. With that, we're adjourned. Good night.